Hello everyone. Good to see people joining online. We wait a couple of minutes so everybody can join in and then we will start our session. Well, it's no more a surprise. You've seen on our creative who we are getting as our guest of honor today. So today's subject is going to be Piedmont, a very historic wine region from Italy, a region that we have heard about, we know a little about, we might not know everything about. A lot of us think that Piedmont is all about Barolos and Barbarescos. Well, do you know a fact? Though Barbarescos and Barolos can be the crown jewels of the region Piedmont, but they account for only 3 to 4% of total winemaking. However, the region has many other styles to offer. So, what is it about the region? We'll go beyond the region, and today we are going to be online live with Valentina Abbona. She is the sixth generation winemaker from the Abbona family. She is joining us live from the town of Barolo, from the house of Marchesi di Barolo, the historic cellars from the region of Barolo. I will take them online now, and I can't wait further.
Hello.
Ciao, Valentina. How are you?
I'm super well now that I see you. How are you?
I am also not too bad, just locked at home. I see some beautiful scenes around you. Unfortunately, I can't step out, so I'm confined at my home. But very happy to see you. Thank you.
Same, same. Well, I'm very lucky because today is the first day of sunshine after a few days of big rain. So I decided to step outside on our terrace, right, as you can see in the above, right in front of the castle, in the center of the town of Barolo. So I will try to take you a little bit more inland in our hometown and overlooking our vineyards. Ciao a
Well,
tutti.
well, that's so cool. I hope everybody is doing well and the family.
Luckily, yes. As you know, we live together with our grandmother, who's just here above us, one floor above. And luckily, we are all well. So fingers crossed that this moment will end soon. But it's good that at least the health is here.
Well, there are a lot of people who know you in India. You've been here many times. Mom Anna has been here many times.
Yes.
So everybody is sending best wishes to you and your family.
And I'm sending love back. India is one of our favorite countries because of the beautiful people that are there. We feel at home every time we travel in India. So thank you.
Likewise, likewise. I can't forget my trip when I visited your house, and I must say that that some kind of soul connects from the both ends, and yeah, some
True,
great people that I've met in my journey.
true.
So, as we said, we are doing these live sessions to bring in some first-hand experience. I have a lot of people who want to come and become a sommelier, so they want to have a kickstart in their journey. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people who are consumers who want to understand beyond Barolos and Barbaresco what the region is all about, and also, of course, they've been drinking but they don't know much about it. A
Okay.
lot of people are familiar with Marchesi di Barolo because probably the label has been available in India for a very long time. So we have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of your wines which are present in many cities in India.
Which
So,
is beautiful.
yeah, which is of course all thanks to you for sending your love to our country.
Thank you. It's well, I think that we are very lucky for the reasons that you just mentioned. First of all, because the wines have been in India for quite a long time, so people are familiar with them. But it's also true to the long history of Marchesi di Barolo, which is very much linked to the most important appellation that we produce, which is Barolo. As a matter of fact, Barolo wine was literally born in the cellars that our family manages today, right here where I'm standing. If it's too windy, let me know. I will go inside if you
No,
don't
it's
hear
perfect,
well.
perfect.
Okay,
No problem.
fantastic, fantastic. So, as you said, before going into Barolo wine, I'm sorry, you can see the wind. We all know that Piemonte does not produce only Barolo and Barbaresco, but we grow other beautiful grapes than Nebbiolo, which is the grape used for these important appellations. Grapes as Cortese, that we use, for example, for producing the famous Gavi. We are still in Piemonte, just few kilometers from Barolo. We're actually closer to the seaside when looking at Gavi area. In fact, in any Gavi wine, we see this beautiful breeze like the one in which I'm sitting right now that comes directly from the sea, and that gives a little bit of saltiness to the wine, making it very crisp, very mineral, and beautiful with your stronger flavors and the spices that are typical of your cuisine. I'm thinking, for example, at Panir with Gavi. It's to me one of the most beautiful pairings because of the softness of the cheese, but also the strong flavors of what there is above it. So with the crispiness and the saltiness of Gavi, it's truly perfect. But Piemonte, it's a land of picky grapes, very demanding in terms of soil types and microclimate where these grapes grow. In fact, Cortese is grown here in Gavi, a few kilometers from Barolo, but we don't grow Cortese here in the town in which I'm sitting, where we grow more typical varietals from Langhe and Roero area. As white, for example, we grow Arneise. This is another varietal from Piemonte that does not grow in Gavi. It grows only here in the area where I'm now. Arneise in our dialect means little rascal because it's one of the most difficult grapes to grow, but one of the most beautiful ones in terms of wine that is made from this grape. Is not as fresh and crispy like the Gavi that I showed you earlier. I think that Arneise, it's way more powerful. It tastes a little bit more like banana, so it's more consistent in the glass, but also in the sweeter notes that come from the glass. So it's a dry wine, it's not sweet, but it tastes more persistent and more important. In fact, we can be even more adventurous when pairing Arneise. We can have some richer foods with it, for sure. So already, just talking about white varietals, we use only two mainly, which are Cortese in Gavi and Arneise in this area of Langhe and Roero, where Arneise really finds his home, but so different and so specific to their land. I think that this is really the beauty about Piemonte. We find beautiful Cabernet, beautiful Merlot or Syrah from all over the world, but grapes from Piedmont are typical from this region, and we don't grow them in other places because otherwise they will lose their identity, they will lose their typicity. It's the same, for example, with Barbera, which I don't know if I'm sure you know. I don't know if your public knows, but Barbera is actually the most widely grown grape within Piemonte. Nebbiolo, it's in a smaller percentage. Barbera is way more present. But again, Barbera, it's very demanding. Where it grows, it changes slightly. In fact, here where I'm sitting, the most typical expression of Barbera, it's Barbera from Alba, Barbera d'Alba. So it's always very well specified on the label where our grapes are grown. Sometimes we even forget about the name of the grape, like in the example of Gavi, does not show on the label the name Cortese, which is the name of the grape. We prefer the name of the area, which is what typifies our grapes the most. In Barbera, we can say it's an everyday wine, very easygoing, quite fruity, juicy, dark in color, super versatile because of the great acidity that it has. So this, you can pair it basically with anything. You can pair it with vegetables, but you can also pair it with some nice meats. So from the north to the south, even in India, Barbera in general, it's the perfect match to me with the comfy everyday food. So this is one of the other beauties of Piedmont, because again, it's not only about Barolo.
Right.
Are there any questions so far?
So, so all the labels that you've shown are all available in India.
These ones, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. These
I
ones,
want
yes.
to ask you. I want to ask you about your percentage of wines. How
Hmm.
many different Barberas are you producing and bottling,
Okay.
versus how many different types of Barolos and Barbarescos?
So I said that all grapes are very demanding. Some are more, some are a little bit less. Barbera is a demanding grape, but definitely less demanding compared to Nebbiolo. So Barbera, we represent three expressions of Barbera as appellations. Barbera d'Alba, Barbera del Monferrato, which grows just next door, but from sandier soils, so shows more freshness, more immediateness in terms of perfume and pleasantness in the mouth. This from Alba, it's a little bit more structured, and Barbera from Asti, which is kind of in the middle between the two. So these are the three general areas where we produce our Barbera. In terms of Nebbiolo, which is by far the most demanding grape, we can really play and show many expressions of it. We can have Nebbiolo from the Langhe area in general, Nebbiolo from Alba, which is more specific within Langhe, and for sure, Nebbiolo in its expression of Barbaresco and Barolo. And when it comes to these, opportunities are infinite. As a winery, we represent 3 single vineyards of Barolo, which I can actually point you out in a second, that are all here within our little town, that characterized by unique soil types, that specify the grapes in a very unique way. So even though we produce 6 different expressions of Barolo, there is not one that overlaps with the other, because they're very specific according to the soil type, the climate of the specific area. In fact, I will show you quickly. This is the little town where I live, Barolo. We are only 700 people. It's not more than what you see here. But you see all these vineyards that are just behind the castle and surrounding us on this side. They are all so specific in terms of soil, even though they are so close one to the other, that we can make different expression of Barolo. So different expression of the very same wine. And Barolo wine is intimately linked to the story of our winery, because it was born here in these same cellars where we make wine still today. We actually have barrels, and I can't take you downstairs, unfortunately, because there is no internet connection. So I will lose you. You just have to trust me and hopefully visit very soon as this pandemic will be over and they will be safe to travel again. But we use the steel barrels that are 200 years old, that were the very first ones used for making the very first Barolo. The people that started the story of this wine used to live in the castle, which is just at my back. There were the Marcheses of the town of Barolo, and they built a winery right in front of the castle, where they could make this beautiful wine and age it in barrels, so that the juice from the grape could complete fermentation and become still dry and more refined because of the long aging in wood. So benefiting from the exchange of oxygen between the inside and the outside of, I should say, the outside and the inside of the barrel. So Barolo, it's a wine that has 200 years of history and way more than 200 opportunities of being expressed. Because as I said, each one of these vineyards that are surrounding me are quite different in terms of soil types. As I can't take you in the vineyards with me, I took some samples of soils to show you. This, for example, is Coste di Rose. You can see how sandy it is. It's very, very loose, very fine. And this vineyard, it's right there behind the castle. It's just at the back of the castle. So right within the town, we have so sandy vineyards that looks like being on a beach. And soils like these ones allow Nebbiolo to be extremely perfumed, delicate in the structure. It this Barolo doesn't need to age for a super long time, but just a little while, the minimum required by age in order to be pleasant and to be accessible. On the other side, still in this same village, just a few hundred meters in this way, so basically opposite to where we just were, we have the very rocky soils, typical of a vineyard like Sarmassa, for example. You can see immediately the difference between the two. One very sandy, the other one very, very rocky. Here, vines have a way more challenging life. In fact, they have to dig into deep, and they give birth to a more structured expression of Barolo that has to be waited for a longer time, that is more tannic, it's drier, so it's more silent on the nose. You need more time before the wine actually opens up and speaks to you. And then we have mixed situations, like the very famous and iconic vineyard of Cannubi, which is a mix of rocks, smaller rocks, with still a nice amount of sand. So it's like taking the other two and putting them together. And this vineyard is just here. So in the middle between Coste di Rose and Sarmassa. So already between just a few hundred meters of distance, we can see how we have already three very clear expressions of land that give birth to three different expressions of the same wine, Barolo. But there is something, of course, that links all of these together, which is the way Barolo shows once in the glass. Maybe you can see how transparent it is. You can still see behind it. It's never too dark. This is the typicity of grape Nebbiolo. In any of his expression, you can always find Nebbiolo to be so clear. It looks so pale and approachable, but once you have it in the mouth, then you will discover the uniqueness of land, being more dry or more tannic, or a little bit more smooth and approachable according if it's grown on, the Nebbiolo is grown on sandier soils or on more compact and stony soils.
Right, right. So I want to ask about this graph of Nebbiolo from being a very basic Nebbiolo, going up maybe a Barbaresco, and then maybe Reservas, then Barolos, and then Barolo Reservas. And of course, with this graph, the price also will keep going up. As a consumer, you want to buy a Barolo or Barbaresco. How do you decide that?
This is an interesting question. I think that it always involves a little bit of knowledge about the wines, because it's about the quality of the land, because the grape, of course, is the same, but if grown on different lands, it will give different expressions of wines. From a more comprehensive region where soils are more mixed and not as concentrated as just looking at one of these, you would have a more generous expression, more approachable, as it a sort of mix and match. And that would be a more simple Langhe Nebbiolo, which doesn't need to age for so long as Barolo has. When you shrink the zoom and you look at only one specific area, of course, you have a different characteristic of the soil, because you're just looking at one smaller dot within the picture. And we move the zoom from Barbaresco to Barolo now to show you a little bit of the difference. Barbaresco, which is a little bit more east of where I am, a little bit more far away from the mountains, but closer to a river called Tanaro that mitigates a little bit the climate, is characterized also by sandier soils, by younger soils, in general a little bit more similar to this one, that allow more gentle expressions. So it's a step up compared to a Langhe Nebbiolo. We are shrinking the zoom only on the small appellation of Barbaresco, which counts only 4 municipalities. So very, very little, but very, very special because of the uniqueness of the climate, being far away from the mountains and closer to the river, and characterized by these sandier soils that allow stronger, but at the same time approachable expression of Nebbiolo grape. These are the reasons why Barbaresco doesn't need to age for so long as we age it here in Barolo, and can be shown in the market a little bit earlier. And is the same reason why usually comes at a little bit more approachable pricing. But even in Barbaresco, you can go into deep and discover situations like single vineyard that really identify only a very, very tiny part of land, which of course becomes more precious. So it's always a matter of knowing the land in order to having an understanding also of why the prices change so much. When we move here in Barolo, soil is more complex, so we have to do a little bit more effort in terms of managing vineyards and in terms of making the wine, as the wine needs to age for a longer time in the cellar too. Land is more expensive in general, so all these elements impact on the final price of a wine. And when looking at the Barolo DOCG appellation, which counts 11 different towns and 170 different single vineyards, so single situation like these ones here, for example, there is a number of expression of prices that can be reflected. But there is always a more generic and generous expressions of Barolo, like, for example, Barolo Tradizione, which comprehends more single vineyards that we carefully put together in order to represent this diversity in a more approachable way and at a more affordable pricing.
Well, that makes sense.
I saw that there are some questions.
Yeah, so I will take some questions now.
Yes.
Before I take, guys, if you have any question, please tap the question mark at the bottom of your screen and then take the question so I can display it on the screen. So I will take the first question. Okay, somebody is asking difference between Barolo and Barbaresco.
Okay, and then I will go back to a question that was just written in the chat. But the difference between Barolo and Barbaresco, these two regions are far apart only of 20 kilometers or so, which translates into 20 minutes by car. So they are very, very close. But in Barbaresco, as I was saying, we are closer to a river, Tanaro, that mitigates the climate, and especially the difference between day and night. It's a little bit more consistent, and we are more out in the land, more far away from the mountains, so it's a little bit more windy, and the soils are more younger, so they are still more sandy. These elements impact on Nebbiolo grape, showing more approachability and less need to age in order to be finished and ready wines to be enjoyed. On the other side, here in Barolo, we are closer to mountains, so it's usually less windy than today. Today is kind of an exception. We don't have rivers, we don't have big rivers as the one in Barbaresco, so the difference between day and night, it's more large in terms of temperature, and the soils in general are, in average, a little bit more rocky because they are older soils. So same grape, Nebbiolo shows more powerful character and longer need to age because of the greater tannins that grapes here in Barolo have. As a matter of fact, Barbaresco needs to age only 2 years, 1 year in wood and 1 year in cellar in a bottle before being released. Barolo, it's 2 years in wood and 1 year in bottle before being released in the market. These are the minimum aging requirements.
Okay, I'll take. Okay, you want to answer that question on terroir?
Yes, about the terroir. It changes within the area. So generally speaking, Barbaresco is characterized by those elements that I was saying earlier, and Barolo is characterized by rockier soil and more difference between day and night temperature and more close to the mountains. But we can see already here, just by pointing at here, for example, you can see how many different exposures we can find and how many different altitudes of the vineyards. There is a vineyard there which is already shadowed, and just next to it is not yet. So it varies within vineyard to vineyard. This is how deep we can go in the knowledge of the terroir and the expression of wine that we can see from that specific terroir. We saw it here from the soils. Rocks, sand, within just few hundred meters of distance as the crow flies. And I agree with Gianpaolo, which I'm saying hello to, that the wine, every wine represents also the personality of the producer. We are around a little bit more than 400 producers of Barolo. Each one of us has its own identity. So it's all the single vineyards plus the identity of the producers. So there are infinite expressions of wine that you can find from any area and specific here in Barolo.
Okay, next question.
Can you, okay.
What is her favorite wine from the house?
This is a challenging question to answer, as all wines are beautiful, you know, just like the kids for a mother.
Yeah.
But I would say that it varies from moment to moment according to what I'm eating and according to the mood I'm in. Usually the very classic expression of Barolo, like this one here that I poured for me for this chat today, it's what accomplishes me the most, because it contains grapes from rocky soils, but also grapes from sandy soils. So it's infinite shades that come one after the other.
Right. Since we are talking about soil, someone is asking, what do you mean by a younger soil?
So younger soil, this is actually a nice question. Younger soil mean that they're raised later from the sea. Millions of years ago, all the area here was underneath the seaside. So at the bottom of the sea, of course, we have sand and limo. So the latest vineyards emerged from the sea, the more amount of sand and limo they still contain. And for young, I mean that they came out from the sea already 7 to 11 million of years ago, but the older soils are even older, dating 14 million of years ago. So all the nice amount of sand and limo was little by little eroded, was little by little washed away about from rain, from snow or wind that moved it towards what today is still seaside. Oh, this is beautiful that you had for the very first time Barolo and Barbaresco from Marchesi di Barolo. I'm really glad that we started your journey. So Gemme and Gattinara are two wine regions where Nebbiolo is grown more in the north. Here we are in the south of Piedmont, so same region of Italy, but Gemme and Gattinara are more in the north. So definitely different climate, as we are at a different longitude, and also different soil types. So in Gemme and Gattinara, Nebbiolo shows great personality, but is never as strong as the Nebbiolo that grows in Barbaresco or in Barolo, for example, where soils are so interesting in terms of composition and where we have this unique situation in terms of climate.
Right. I have one question. Now,
Please.
Historically, the region was always known as, especially when it comes to Barolos, that Barolos has to be aged for a very long time before you drink them. Then suddenly this revolution happened in late 20th century that some younger winemakers or younger generation started making some younger wines with use of small barrels and all those stories that we heard.
Yeah.
Where do you position yourself as a traditional winemaker or a modern winemaker?
So I would say that there's been in general, a revolution in winemaking since the 50s to nowadays. Because still in the 50s, any Barolo producer still used the complete bunch. So grapes, but also the wooden part, the stem. So including the stem and the seeds in the fermentation process, the wine was very way more aggressive, and the tannins were very unpleasant. So you needed necessary very long aging in wood before the wine was actually cleaner and pleasant on your tongue. So this was already a very important change that is part of history for the winemaking region. Back in like the 80s and 90s or so, some producers introduced smaller barrels that allowed even quicker aging in wood, so that the wine was immediately more muscly because of the greater exchange of oxygen from the outside to the inside of the barrels, and sweeter tannins taken from those smaller barrels, which are more tender and release more aroma within the wine. Marchesi di Barolo stands, I would say, towards the traditional side, as we have a majority of large barrels that are used, especially for the classic productions in which we take grapes from different parcels and we put them together to find their harmony in a bigger container, so in a bigger barrel. But we do use eventually barrique for single vineyards like Canubi, for example. It's always a little touch. We use a little bit of barrique at the beginning of the aging process, so that the grapes that are very strong from these single vineyards, they show a lot of character, so that these grapes can round up their tannins, and then little by little we put together these smaller barrels into bigger barrels, so to let the final blend to find its own harmony. So we stand more towards the traditional side, but we do use tools which today we realize as producers that can help our wines to show their beauty in a very precise way.
Right, right.
Barrels in general are tools that need to be used with the right attention and with the right knowledge. If we have this knowledge, and luckily, as we have 200 years of winemaking history in our winery, we can take advantage from what we learned every single year and put it together in order to implement the new techniques and the new tools that our contemporary era put at our disposal in order to show the most classic expression of our region and the very precise soils of single vineyards.
Well, experience definitely helps. And let's see what have you taken have you started making wines yourself? Any wines that you say this is my baby completely?
Well, that would be more of my brother. My brother Davide studied winemaking and enology in his high school, and right now he just graduated from university, so he's assisting our winemaker and the team in the cellar in order to experience more the production side. Myself, I'm more on the on sales and marketing, so I still didn't make wine myself because no one allows me next to next to the winery. I have to take baby steps, but one day maybe it will happen.
Okay, someone wants to know about Barolo Chinato.
Yes. Ciao, Vishwas, first of all. It's nice to see you here. Barolo Chinato to me is one of the most fascinating experiences that you can have with Barolo. It's actually in between a wine, a Barolo, and a vermouth, because it's an aromatized Barolo in which we put an alcoholic solution. We blend Barolo with an alcoholic solution in which we left the different spices and herbs, flowers in maceration in order to extract those flavors. So Barolo Chinato can be used as a digestive because of the digestive properties of the spices and the roots that were left in maceration. For sure, flowers and vanilla, for example, release sweeter aromas, allowing even more expression in the wine. So it's super rich in both the perfume and then the taste in the mouth. So to me, can be used also as a beautiful mixture for certain cocktails, such as a Negroni or a Manhattan. So today, because of the greatest knowledge, again, that we can really play with what we have at our disposal, even very ancient products like Barolo Chinato, which was first made in order to cure people from diseases. Then it became a digestive, of course, and now we can experience it also as an aperitif or as a cocktail mixer.
Well, Vishwas
And
loves
we
to make a
still
lot of
produce it.
cocktails with
Yeah.
Kinatos.
Yeah.
Wherever
I
he
think
goes, he
it's
always has a cocktail with Kinato.
yeah, I think it's quite fun because it really adds a lot of nice aromas, plus all the complexity that is already typical of the base wine that is used, which is Barolo, which has a number of expressions in both the nose and the mouth, which is already extraordinary.
Method champagne used in Asti sparkling wines. Let's talk about
Yes.
sparkling or Asti's Moscato for that matter.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So both Moscato d'Asti and Asti Spumante are made in the Charmat method using stainless steel tanks in which we let fermentation happen. So it's not the champagne method; it's the one within the tank, and fermentation happens until we stop it. So we stop it manually. We stop it earlier in regular Moscato d'Asti in order to preserve a very delicate fizziness and a great sweetness from the grape. So it's all natural sugar from grape Moscato. While in Asti Spumante, we let the fermentation go for a little bit longer in order to create more bubbles, because of course we know that sugar during fermentation is transformed into both CO2 and alcohol. So by stopping fermentation later, we have more bubble, is more fizzy, and we have a little bit less sweetness as more sugar has been transformed and is a little bit more alcoholic.
So Moscato di Asti and Asti Spumante
Are made of the same grape, Moscato, which is not a random Moscato. It's a Moscato that grows specifically within the region of Asti. So just next door of where I am right now. And as a matter of fact, you can't produce Moscato d'Asti anywhere else, if not from Asti, as well as Asti Spumante. So the grape Moscato that grows within this region, where we have nice sandy soils and a lot of minerality in the soil, always show great freshness. Even though it's a sweet, both of them are sweet wines, they're very crisp and very fresh, super refreshing. And we make these wines by stopping fermentation by lowering the temperature during the fermentation in stainless steel tanks.
Right. Well, it's about Marchesi di Barolo. How many bottles or cases do you produce in a year?
Yes. So I'm just saying, Gianpaolo, you know everything. So yes, of course. Today, Marchesi di Barolo owns and controls around 200 hectares of vineyards within the south of Piedmont region. So in Barolo, in Barbaresco, in the more general Alba and Langhe area, but also some in Roero and some in Monferrato and Asti, of course. So these are all the appellations that we're able to produce. And when I say control, means that vineyards are owned by families that we have very long relationship with, and from which we buy the oil production every year from generation to generation. So they grow the grape as we asked for. and there is no difference between the methods that are applied in our estate vineyards and the ones that are applied in the vineyards of our grape growers. So the quality is absolutely the same. And today we produce, because of the different appellations in which we are able to show wines, around 1.5 million of bottles, which is a large number altogether, but is a sum of smaller production from each appellation. We just said earlier at the beginning of our conversation that we produce 6 different expressions of Barolo. For some of them, like the single vineyards, not more than 20,000 bottles are made every year. So we are really talking about smaller numbers from these different appellations and specific single vineyards to represent all of the beauty and the diversity of our bigger region, which is the south of Piedmont.
So I will ask one last question.
Please.
If we have to visit your beautiful town, what is the best time of the year to visit Alba or Barolo or Piedmont?
Well, I'm biased because I used to travel a lot, so I was never home, and any moment I was home to me was the most beautiful. But look at Barolo right now. It has just rained, so everything is so green and bright. It's just beautiful. So I would recommend to visit Barolo in at least 2 times of the year, and then we will pick our favorite one. But springtime, where we see all this green, and we're actually able to see all the way to the mountains, which are in front of me, so I can show them to you, because in front of me there is actually our home right now. And you can see how close we are to the mountains. But in autumn, so in full time, when all these beautiful green vineyards become brown, red, yellow, and it's just like a painting that used all different colors and is extraordinary. And in full time, for the foodie ones that are listening, truffles find their home, especially in the town of Alba, where we have the famous white truffles, and those, of course, come in full time. So if you want to combine the two, maybe fall is the best.
Well, thank you, Valentina. This was a great, very, very great of you to be available today. I think I still have a long list of questions, but most of it was answered by you in the conversation. Okay. I think some people joined midway, so they're still asking difference between Barolo and Barbaresco. I will put this chat on the live so people can restream it and see that for next 24 hours. So, perfect. I wish you all the best. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Atul. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of being closer to you right now, even if from my home. And thank you to the many friends that were here, not just from India, but also from Italy. I'm seeing Stefano, which is a long time I have not seen. I see Omin from Malaysia. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a great platform also. I've also started learning this and thought, why not make the best of it? Otherwise, work keeps us busy. And because of this, it's like blessing in disguise, you know. Something positive need to come out of this. So good for all of us to hear from you. And we kind of virtually visited the region that you've been showing all the scenes behind you. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, next time when you will be here, we will take a walk, which is even more beautiful.
Absolutely. No, I remember
we do what we can do.
Yeah, we went on a drive last time, and you showed me all different areas where your grapes are grown and all the different other wineries as well. It was a great experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, can't wait to return back and can't wait to meet you.
Same.
All the best from all of us.
Same.
Thank you.
Thank you. And big love to your beautiful country. I hope that you're well, and let's hope to see each other soon.
Absolutely.
Ciao. Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the session. This was so exciting, and she is so nice to even show us all those soil samples, her labels, and all the scenes behind. As we are committed to bring the best to you right at your home and utilize the best of our time, we have a lot more coming up. So keep learning, keep studying, and all those people who want to be sommeliers, I think this was a good kickstart for you guys. Go study now.